So in this video, I'll be taking you through the latest developments concerning the retrial of the nurse Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby is currently standing trial on one count of attempted murder. The information provided in this video is from the live reporting taken directly from inside the courtroom. Benjamin Myers KC for Letby's defence is now asking questions. Letby denies attempting to kill child K. She denies intending to do the baby girl any harm at all. Mr. Myers raises the issue of previous convictions. Letby denies she has ever harmed or attempted to harm any baby in her care. Mr. Myers refers to the events of 3:45 to 3:50 a.m. on February 17, 2016. Letby says she has no recollection of that event. She says she does have a memory of seeing child K in nursery 1 at some point, but cannot be specific with timings. Mr. Myers raises Dr. J. Ram's evidence. Letby says she does not recall anything like that happening, or of the consultant doctor coming in when she was present. She does not recall saying she has just begun to desaturate. She does not remember being there in those circumstances. Asked to clarify, Letby denies accepting that it happened. Asked about Letby's Facebook search in April 2018 for child K's surname, Letby says, "I'm not sure. I don't have any recollection of why I did it." Mr. Myers raises the police interviews that Letby was in. In one of them, Letby was asked about the 3:50 a.m. event and what contact Letby had with child K. She said at the time she did not recall why she was in the nursery. Mr. Myers asks about the co-signing of morphine at 3:50 a.m. Letby was asked if that helped her memory, and she said it did not. Letby says for the police interview she had a selection of charts and nursing notes to assist in her memory. She says she does not have an independent memory for that. She says the 3:50 a.m. time would have come from the prescription charts and not from her memory. The police interview asked how Letby knew the ET tube had slipped. Letby had said in the interview it's from reading Nurse Melanie Taylor's notes. She says she was relying on the documentation that was in front of her. The notes are shown to the court and are from the day shift written retrospectively at 4:06 p.m. Written for care handed over from 07:30. As commencing shift ETT slipped, loss of colour, saturations dropped, Dr. J. Ram resecured ETT. Mr. Myers asked if Letby was referring to any event around 3:50 a.m. Letby replies, "No, I was just relying on these notes." Letby said she remembered child K. She was a 25-week gestation baby, which was unusual on the unit. I do remember her being on the unit at some point. Letby has no recollection of any events associated with child K on the unit. The 2019 police interview is referred to, which includes Dr. J. Ram's recollection of the event. Asked by Mr. Myers, Letby says she does not agree that anything like Dr. J. Ram's account happened. Mr. Myers asks about the sedation for child K. Letby had agreed child K was sedated, which she said she had seen from Melanie Taylor's notes. Mr. Myers asks why Letby was agreeing. Letby says she was relying with what she had in front of her. She says she did not have notes from the time of the event. Asked if she agreed that she was present in room 1 when Dr. J. Ram came in, Letby says no. Letby had also said in interview, "I didn't dislodge her tube." Asked about that, she replies, "Because I didn't dislodge her tube, and that is what I thought I was being asked at the time." Mr. Myers asks if child K was paralysed at the time of the first event. Letby says no. Asked why she had agreed in police interview with Dr. J. Ram's account that child K was paralysed at 3:50 a.m, Letby says, "I took Dr. J. Ram's word to be the truth." Mr. Myers asks about an earlier moment where the ET tube slipped. Letby says it was referred to in Melanie Taylor's notes. Letby says child K was not paralysed as she has not seen any medication notes prior to 3:50 a.m. for child K which would affect that. Letby adds there is a difference between sedation and being paralysed in terms of the medication administered to affect that. Letby denies being the person present to call for help in room 1. She had said in police interview she would not know why the alarm would be silenced. Asked about it, she said she could have been possibly waiting to see if child K self-corrected when child K's saturation levels dropped. Letby says she was trying to be helpful to the police and think of reasons why she would be in the nursery at the time. The police interview asked Letby about telephone messaging in relation to child K. Letby says it happens frequently that nursing colleagues message each other about babies. The court is shown an example of that messaging between Letby and a nursing colleague. The colleague is the first to bring up child K, and Letby responds with details about the baby girl's potential arrival. A message conversation with another colleague, Elsa Simpson, is relayed to the court. Miss Simpson refers to a 24-weeker, which Letby confirms to the court is child K. Letby is asked about her shift that night on February 16th to 17th. She says she was in room 2, but would go to other rooms to assist other nurses with their babies or collect medications. She adds room 1 is where most of the medications are kept for use for the whole unit. It was a busy room. People would be in and out of the nursery that night, she said. Letby confirms she was designated nurse for 2 babies in room 2 that night. Mr. Myers says from the chart, Sophie Ellis is designated nurse for babies in rooms 3 and 4. Letby says it is not a problem that colleagues from other nurseries come to help co-sign, as 2 nurses are required for such tasks. Asked what would happen to the babies in those other nurseries, Letby says a nurse would be asked to look out for those babies while the designated nurse was away. Letby says it was common practice for her colleagues to assist other nurses, and she would not have an independent recollection of such assistance. Mr. Myers refers to events and duties from that night, and asks Letby to explain what they were. One of them is a feed via a nasogastric tube for a baby in room 2 at 12:30 a.m. Letby explains the process. Mr. Myers asks if the feed starts at exactly 12:30 a.m. Letby replies, no. Mr. Myers says if that time noted gives an idea of how long the process takes. Letby says it does not, and the process of an NGT feed would take approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Letby says the nursing notes of entries such as 1 a.m. are an approximation, such as taking observation readings, and would not necessarily be at 1 a.m. exactly. Mr. Myers refers to the 3:30 a.m. readings. Letby is noted as carrying out a feed and observations for a baby that is not child K. Letby is also recorded at 3:30 a.m. as being a co-signer on a logbook for getting a 50ml morphine syringe out of a storage fridge. Letby says that was the time it was withdrawn from the fridge. She adds it would take time for that morphine syringe to warm up to room temperature and would not be used immediately. She adds that time it was taken out would be as accurate as they could. An observation chart for a baby which Letby was caring for that night, not child K, is shown to the court. Letby has signed observation readings for the baby at 9:30 p.m, 12:30 a.m, 3:30 a.m, and 6:30 a.m. A feed chart is shown for the baby. One of the readings is for 3:30 a.m. She says, quote, "This would take a period of time." Asked about an average of time, she says about 10 to 15 minutes, which would be longer if there was also a nappy change. She adds the feed would not necessarily be commenced at 3:30 a.m. exactly. Letby says she can see from the notes that she changed this baby's nappy at the 3:30 a.m. feed. Mr. Myers asks if Letby has any memory of the 3:50 a.m. desaturation for child K. Letby says she does not, and has no memory of being asked to look after child K by Joanne Williams. Letby says she has no memory of the circumstances which led her to being involved in the morphine administration for child K at that time. She is listed as a co-signer. Asked about the 3:30 a.m. morphine commenced reading on the fluid chart, Letby says that time would be an approximation. The chart also shows, in Letby's writing, 0350 100mg kg morphine. Letby says she does not remember writing that note. An infusion chart for the prescription of the morphine syringe is shown. Dr. Jairam has signed for the prescription at 3:50 a.m. as the doctor's signature. Letby and Joanne Williams have signed for the nurse's signatures. The 3:50 a.m. time is in Dr. Jairam's writing, Letby says. Letby says the time could not have been before 3:50 a.m. Letby is noted on the schedule as co-signer for a baby not child K that Caroline Oakley was designated nurse for in Nursery 1. Later that night, Caroline Oakley and Lucy Letby are co-signers for medication for child K. Mr. Myers asked if either of them were the designated nurse for child K. Letby says they were not. Mr. Myers asked if there was any significance to that. Letby says there is not. Letby later adds admission records for child K on a computer shortly after 6 a.m. The timing on the computer system is accurate, the court hears. She says she does not recall writing the records. Letby denies interfering with child K's ET tube moments later. A chart for a saline bolus is prescribed for child K, signed for by Dr. Jairam and administered by Caroline Oakley and Lucy Letby at 6:25 a.m. That timing would be accurate, Letby says. Letby is asked about the third desaturation. She says she has no recollection of it. Letby's last involvement with child K recorded is around that time. The court hears her night shift finished around 8 a.m. and she had no further involvement with child K after that point. Letby denies trying to hurt child K or trying to interfere with her to give the impression she was more unwell. Letby says, no, absolutely not. That concludes the questions by Mr. Myers. Nicholas Johnson KC prosecuting will now be cross-examining Lucy Letby. Mr. Johnson says having a 25-week neonate at Chester was very unusual. Letby replies, yes. Letby says she had seen quite a few before at Liverpool Women's Hospital, but not at Chester. She says she remembered seeing child K. Mr. Johnson says when police came to see her in 2018, she recalled child K. Letby says she cannot recall much of her police interview. Letby is asked about her April 2018 Facebook search for child K. 11 weeks later, she was arrested by police. Letby says she does not recall why she was searching for the child's surname. Mr. Johnson says if a nurse deliberately displaced the ET tube on a child of child K's gestation, what would likely happen? Letby replies, that's a hypothetical question. Mr. Johnson says, why wouldn't you? Letby replies, you would cause harm to the baby. They can't breathe without that tube. Mr. Johnson says if action isn't taken to correct it quickly, it would be likely to severely compromise their prospects of survival. Letby agrees. That is what you did, isn't it? No. You actually did it 3 times. No. Mr. Johnson refers to the first event of about 3:50 a.m. Letby says she is not sure of the precise timing. It had happened by the time Joanne Williams came back into the unit at 3:47 a.m. Letby replies, yes. Letby adds, I know my actions and I know I did not displace that tube. Mr. Johnson refers to Dr. Jairam's account, asking if he's not telling the truth. Letby replies, I don't think I can comment if he is telling the truth. All I know is that it did not happen. Mr. Johnson refers again to the doctor's account of events. Nicholas Johnson says, you're saying that cannot be true. Letby replies, yes. Mr. Johnson refers to the second event, just after an X-ray when the tube was in the correct place. Letby says she cannot remember the event. The third event had come after the day shift nurse came in. Letby says she cannot remember that event. She says she cannot comment on that nurse's account of events, whether it was true or not. Letby says regarding the first event, I don't believe I stood there while that tube was dislodged. Letby says for the third event the nurse might be right of her account of events when the day shift nurse described Letby neopuffing child K. Nicholas Johnson says, you are just that sort of person who kills babies. Letby replies, no. Nicholas Johnson says, you have killed 7 babies and tried to kill 6 others, one on 2 separate occasions. Letby replies, no, I haven't. Mr. Johnson refers to Letby's 2022 defence statement. At the beginning, Letby dealt with general issues, then by the cases on a baby-by-baby basis. Letby agrees. Mr. Johnson refers to the section involving child K. He asks whether when she signed it, she made sure what she said in there was true. Letby agrees. Mr. Johnson says he wants to clarify 2 paragraphs in the statement, which refer to allegations raised by her and her grievance procedure against the hospital. She adds she does not accept the good faith of Dr. Jairam during this grievance process or generally. What did you mean by that? Letby replies that I didn't accept any of the things that had been raised by that point. Mr. Johnson says after being removed from the unit in July 2016, Letby raised a grievance procedure. Letby agrees she did not accept the good faith of Dr. Jairam during that procedure. Asked why, Letby replies, because of the comments he has made and things that came to light during that procedure, and the way he was conducting himself in those allegations. The statement adds, the grievance was resolved in my favour, but it is apparent that Dr. Ravi Jairam and Dr. Stephen Breary have been set against me for some time. That is obvious from their witness statements and for some of their conduct towards me in 2015. Nicholas Johnson asks, are you saying to the court that Dr. Jairam's conduct towards you in 2015 to 2016 gave you a justifiable cynicism to his good faith? Letby replies, yes, when I found out his actions, yes. Nicholas Johnson says, at the grievance procedure, it was resolved in your favour. You were vindicated, weren't you? Letby replies, yes. Mr. Johnson says, however, in police interview, Letby had gone on the basis that what Dr. Jairam had said was true. Letby says she had assumed that police had established fact from what was being put to her, potentially from other people's accounts. Letby agrees that the allegation depends on what Dr. Jairam had said. She says when interviewed by police in 2018, she had assumed what had been said to her could be factually backed up. Letby says at the time she was looking at ways that could have factually happened. Mr. Johnson says that was also the case in the 2019 interview. Letby says she has never accepted his version of events. She said she was not remembering. Mr. Johnson says what Letby is saying now is not what she was saying in police interview, that she did not accept Dr. Jairam's account of events. Letby replies, I think it's difficult to look at the context of the interview. Letby is asked what she means by that. She replies, at the time I had a lot of different notes I was looking at, but I don't think I ever accepted that version of events. Mr. Johnson says there was no shift in Letby's position over the police interviews. Letby says she had made it clear at police interview that she had not dislodged the ET tube. Letby says it is still her case that child K was not properly intubated, with problems relating to the size of the ET tube used, and there were other issues with her care. Nicholas Johnson says maybe someone dislodged her tube. Letby replies, well, it wasn't me. Nicholas Johnson says maybe somebody else, if not you. Letby replies, yes. Mr. Johnson asked about a potential tube blockage, as Letby said in interview. He asked if that is still her case. Letby replies, yes. Letby agrees it is her case that child K received suboptimal care and that nursing staff were not experienced with dealing with babies of child K's gestational age. Mr. Johnson asks where in the statement there is anything that says Dr. Jairam could not be correct as she was not in the nursery room at the time of child K's desaturation. Letby replies, it doesn't, but I have made it quite clear I have done nothing to hurt child K. Mr. Johnson asks Letby about child K's mother's statement. Letby says she remembers it. A photo was taken of child K in nursery 1 at 4:31 a.m. on the morning of February 17th. Letby is asked if she remembers seeing the parents with the baby girl. She says she cannot remember. The neonatal schedule for that night is shown to Letby. Letby had earlier said she was involved in the administration of medication to a baby who was in room 1. The time of that medication was 4:34 a.m. Mr. Johnson says the medication would have also come from room 1. You saw them with their daughter, didn't you? Letby says she cannot be sure. She was concentrating on medication for the baby who was in room 1. How did you remember their surname? She replies, I don't know. The agreed facts are presented to Letby. Nothing was found at Letby's address search in relation to the surname of child K. Mr. Johnson refers to the April 2018 Facebook search for child K's surname at nearly midnight. Letby is asked why. She replies, I can't answer that. I don't know why. Nicholas Johnson says, you knew on April 20th, 2018 that the police were asking questions about you and your dealings at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby replies, I thought the police were involved from May, but I could be wrong. Letby is asked if Joanne Williams is a friend of hers. She replies, no. I was not aware of what the police were doing or with who. Nicholas Johnson says, it's just a coincidence that after Joanne Williams had spoken to the police about child K, that you searched her name. Letby replied, yes, I had no contact with Joanne at this point. And you cannot remember why? Letby replies, no. Letby is asked to agree that she has searched on Facebook for the names of babies that she has been convicted of murdering and attempting to murder. Letby agrees that is the case. She adds, I am not guilty of what I have been found guilty of. Asked if it was an innocent coincidence that she had searched the names of babies and parents of babies that she had been convicted of murdering and attempting to murder, Letby says, yes. She adds that she has searched for many other parents and babies on Facebook. Letby said she would have been on her phone day and night, sometimes at work when conducting these searches, many of which are recorded late at night. Nicholas Johnson says, this was a habit, wasn't it? Letby replies, I looked at many parents, not just the babies here. Asked about what her fascination was in looking at these names, Letby replies, it wasn't a fascination, adding she regularly looked at the names of parents. Letby replies, child K was on the unit very briefly. Letby adds, if I remembered any details, I would say, I cannot remember. Nicholas Johnson says, because you are not the sort of person who does this thing. And Letby replies, no. Nicholas Johnson asks, were you looking for grief? The names of parents on Facebook sites, were you searching for evidence of grief? Letby replies, no. Text messages between Letby and a nursing colleague early on February 16th are shown to the court. Letby said, unit is a hive of activity in preparation for the big bods, lol. The court hears this was at the end of Letby's previous night shift. Letby sent in a message at 5:26 p.m. that day saying, quote, no, child K didn't come, but 6 centimetres dilated so wouldn't transfer out. Imagine it will have delivered today. Letby is asked if she had a recollection of the other baby from the February 15th-16th shift when that baby was extubated. She replies she does not. She adds she does not remember that baby. The court is shown a nursing note written between 12:51 a.m. and 1:07 a.m. by Caroline Oakley for that child. The note includes, quote, long line pressures increasing and then occluding. Positional site appears satisfactory. Cares attended to by senior nurse Letby. At 00:15, long line pressures observed to have dropped. Long line snapped from cannula hub. Letby denies she had anything to do with the long line snapping. Mr. Johnson refers to the birth of child K as part of the cross-examination. Letby denies wanting to be part of the care for child K, as she says she was not the most senior member of nursing staff and would not be suitable for a baby of child K's gestational age. A nursing observational chart for child K is shown. Letby confirms the 2:45 a.m. readings are hers. Asked why she has not signed for it, Letby says, that is an oversight on my part. Letby says it would be a team approach when child K arrived on the unit. Asked again why she did not sign on the chart, Lucy Letby says, sometimes things do get missed. Letby denies she did not sign the 2:45 a.m. observation so she could avoid being tied to child K. The court is shown swipe data for Dr. Laura Lowe coming into the neonatal unit from maternity at 2:43 a.m, which Mr. Johnson says would presumably be with child K and others. Mr. Johnson says moments later, Letby fills in the data on the chart in the 2:45 a.m. column. He asks Letby if she can remember what else she was doing at this time. She replies she cannot. A nursing note is shown for a baby Letby was caring for, and the admin note is timed as being opened at 2:36 a.m. and being closed at 2:50 a.m. Letby is asked why she had that open while child K was admitted. Letby said it would be a team effort for a baby's arrival, and it was not unusual for people to leave the computer at the time when such an arrival on the unit happened. Letby is asked if that was to give the impression she was otherwise engaged when child K arrived. Letby replies it was not. Letby is asked about feeding time for a baby she was caring for. She says the times vary on how long a feed takes. Mr. Johnson refers to the 3:30 a.m. feed for the nursery 2 baby and when she actually did that. Letby says there is no way to say exactly as the times are all approximations. Also at 3:30 a.m. are the observation readings for a baby and a morphine medication. Letby says the latter would be a precise timing when the morphine syringe was taken out of the fridge. Letby says the process takes seconds, and the morphine could have been taken by Joanne Williams and the prescription taken to a cot side for Letby to co-sign. Letby says the administration would not be given until it had been prescribed. A reading for, quote, 03:30 commenced is shown. Letby says the note is in Joanne Williams' handwriting, and asked about if that means the morphine infusion commenced at that time, says, that is how it presents. Letby says the chart has been prescribed at 3:50 a.m. from a prescription note. She adds while the morphine can be administered before the prescription time of 03:50, it is not good practice. Nicholas Johnson says, did you wait for Joanne Williams to leave the unit before you decided to go into nursery 1? Letby replies no, and adds she does not remember going into room 1. Mr. Johnson refers to the 3:41 a.m. transport team note from a conversation with Dr. Ravi Jairam. Letby agrees there are telephones at a nursing station outside the room, as well as one inside room 1. Letby is asked if she accepts Joanne Williams coming into the neonatal unit at 3:47 a.m. She replies she does. Mr. Johnson asks if the event must have happened before 3:47 a.m. Letby says it does, given Joanne Williams' statement. Letby says she will agree Dr. Jairam was on the phone, but not sure which one. Mr. Johnson refers to the police interviews with Letby. A short video extract of one of them is played to the court. He says Letby does not say she does not recall why she was in the nursery. He asks why Letby went along with Dr. Jairam's version of events. Letby denies she did so. She adds, this was a highly stressful situation. I was being interviewed about multiple babies on multiple days. Letby denies a suggestion from Mr. Johnson that she is pretending not to remember so she doesn't have to answer difficult questions. Letby is asked about child K's ET tube slipping. Letby is asked why she did not rule out being in the nursery room at the time. She replies she is trying to be helpful and try to fill in the gaps. Nicholas Johnson says, you were hedging your bets, weren't you? Letby replies, no. You were trying to cover for all sorts of unforeseeable eventualities, weren't you? Letby replies, no, I was telling the truth. You were prepared to go along with an account of a doctor who you say had it in for you. Letby replies, no, I don't think I have ever accepted his account. Letby says it was very intimidating in the police interview situation. Nicholas Johnson says, who were you helping? Letby replies, I don't know, not me. I was trying to be compliant with police in an intimidating, stressful situation. That concludes today's proceedings.